doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people, really very, very innocent people. In every place, they control radical left judges, politicians, and activists, and they've adopted a policy of catch and release for thugs and killers. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train. And here's a picture of it. This is the picture of it. And this is a picture of the woman, a beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors. 50 people were murdered in Chicago in recent weeks, with hundreds being shot. And it's time to stop this madness. The people of our country need to insist on protection, safety, law, and order. We have proven that it can be done because we did it right here in D.C., in District of Columbia. The capital of America was a bloodthirsty, horrible, dangerous place, one of the worst. And now it's a crime-free city, and we're going to keep it that way. It can be done. It can happen fast. All we want is, please, Mr. President, we need help. Chicago needs help. Other cities need help. We'll do what has to be done because we're going to make America safe again, and that includes our big cities. We're going to make those cities safe. Thank you.
Well, I have a statement to read for all of you with respect to the Israeli strike in Doha, and here it is. This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace, and quickly. President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
Hamas terrorists are on notice. They are going to be eliminated.
Mr. Ambassador,
understand that and the history. Obviously, Israel is under attack constantly. In this case, Qatar officials and Hamas leadership is saying that you did not get the targets you were seeking. They are obviously condemning this attack as attacking inside an allied country to the U.S. The U.S. here at the White House expressing concern that it did not advance the goals of the U.S. or Israel. And you have the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, with very pointed statements in condemnation. So did you get the targets you were seeking?
If we didn't get them this time, we'll get them the next time. Israel under Prime Minister Netanyahu is changing the face of the Middle East. We have degraded Hezbollah, we've degraded Hamas, the Houthis, and Iran, the head of the snake that's leading these proxies in an effort to destroy Israel. When we defeat these proxies of Iran, when we defeat Islamic extremism, and actually that will benefit our neighbors in the region who are moderate and want to live in a state of peace with us. So right now, we may be subject to a little bit of criticism. They'll get over it. And Israel is being changed for the better. The region is being changed for the better as we remove these enemies of peace and these enemies of Western civilization from their ability to implement terrorism.
Israeli strike earlier today.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this: we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
Did they notify you in advance, Mr. President? Did Israel tell you in advance?
So you were caught by surprise, sir?
I'm never surprised by anything, especially when it comes to the Middle East.
How did you learn about this?
I'll be giving a full statement tomorrow, but I would tell you this: I was very unhappy about it, very unhappy about every aspect, and we got to get the hostages back. But I was very unhappy about the way that went down.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Today's theme is anger and war. I think we're at a turning point. You know, there's a story of Robespierre in the French Revolution, who was instrumental in beheading lots of people. He was one of the chief Bolsheviks of the time, killing anyone who stood in his way, killing any of the elites, killing any of the intelligentsia and anyone else he wanted. And he was up in front of the crowd one day to give the list of who would be executed that day. And somebody stood up and shot him in the face. And then he was executed. And the crowd turned and the revolution was over. The vampire ball was over. There are a lot of the same people who were involved in the French Revolution, the same types of people were then involved in the Russian Revolution and are now involved in this globalist revolution in the US and across the world. I think the killing of Irina Zarutskaya is a turning point. And there's a lot of tech bros going out today to pay for murals to put up all over the country like they did with George Floyd, who overdosed and was not killed by the cop. But Irina was murdered by a black repeat offender on a public transportation. Harmeet Dillon is coming out and saying it's a civil rights issue. So they could possibly start using the civil rights laws the way they were used against the MAGA movement over the last several decades. So a lot to be seen. There's been a lot of criticism of the civil rights laws, but maybe they can be used to some good here going forward. I want to say hello to the crew in the chat. You're cleared hot. Thanks for all the engagement. We try to respond to as much of the comments as we can, but we can't get them all. But today's, we're going to talk about anger. There's a lot of anger over this girl's killing. I was going to play the video, but I just can't. It's too horrific. It's too disturbing. because more of it was released besides just the picture of him about to stab her in the neck. She essentially bled out. I mean, the guy stabbed her multiple times and left. Nobody helped her. There was people a seat away. Nobody helped her. Nobody tried to stop the bleeding, and she just died crying in her hands. So just horrific. So maybe you should watch it just to understand this is not some just incident on the train. This was a murder of an innocent girl coming back from her job at a pizzeria. And her mother said she loved America and wants to be buried, and they're going to bury her here. So anyway, hope her soul's fine today. Also in Europe, 99 red balloons is the theme of the show. Last night, there's a massive attack on Ukraine, and several of the drones went into Poland. These allegedly were surveillance drones, reportedly, I should say, from Russia. NATO has come out and said it wasn't an attack. I just got a message from a source saying that the drones may have come from Kiev in Ukraine itself as a provocation. We're going to dig into that. So stand by for news on that if we get more. And also, we'll probably be writing more about this. But we have an article up on CDM, which we'll talk about. Poland's Tusk really wants war, and the Europeans are all excited about it. It reminded me of the video came out in the 80s, 1983, I think, 99 red balloons. This is it, boys. This is war. They're all excited. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Israeli strike. So we have NATO gearing up for a war against a provocation where nobody was killed and nobody was bombed in Europe, but we have Israel attacking another foreign nation, which, how they get away with that, I don't know. We're just going to report the truth here, okay? We're just going to report the truth. We're not going to add commentary on the whole Israel issue, but look, they just bombed another country. What is that? Does that mean that Canada can bomb us at will if they think there's a terrorist in New York? Does it mean that somebody can bomb Israel at will? There's a terrorist in Israel. This is heavy stuff that we need to talk about. We'll go through that. We have a big show today. Kurt Brackob is going to be here. We're going to talk about Europe, what's going on in the EU. And I've got a treat for you. Mike Rose, who's a hell of an attorney. I've got him this morning early and taped a little segment with him on Harmeet Dillon saying this is a civil rights issue. So we're going to get into that. And then Euro Bytes, the Euro Bytes team is going to talk more about the UK and Europe. But today is September 10th. Tomorrow is September 11th. A lot going on tomorrow. We'll be talking about that. But here's your mission brief. Poland wants to invoke Article 4 over the drone incursion into its airspace. Ridiculous. Tusk is ridiculous. Europeans reminded me of a bunch of masked up virtue signaling college girls who always want to be the victim to get something. And that's what the Europeans are acting like right now. Israel bombs at Qatar. Saudi government officials planned 9/11. A video is released yesterday. That's interesting, the timing on all this. Another tranny killer from Georgia, possibly now in Portland, a reward out. We got that on the Georgia record. In Florida, tyranny continues. We're the only ones talking about this, guys, but it's serious in Florida what they're doing, and we'll delve into it. So we'll be right back after this break. We've got a great show. Stay with us.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Euro Bytes will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and ERA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to the SCIF. I want to highlight cdmmetals.com, where you can go and get all the information on Advisor Metals. You can get your free investing guide, precious metals investing guide, and ways to protect your portfolio, because you need to do that. The markets are extremely volatile. We're in a very uncertain time. Markets hate uncertainty. There's a lot of devaluation going on. So protect your portfolio, your hard work of your whole life in your 401k or whatever, and put some of it in precious metals, a store of value. For 5,000 years, I've had great response from Advisor Metals. People love dealing with them. We're getting transactions coming through all the time. So thank you for that. And it supports us, and it supports your portfolio and your financial security. So cdmmetals.com. I want to start this interview with Mike Rose. I think you'll enjoy it. And then Kurt Brackob will be with us at the bottom of the hour. So I got to hurry up and get this in. Here we go. Well, the news of the Ukrainian young lady being murdered on the train in Charlotte, North Carolina, has caused quite a stir. It's on the news, and the ramifications of that are reverberating around the country. And the first person I thought of to talk about this was Mike Rose, an attorney, accomplished attorney. And the reason I wanted to talk to Mike is because Harmeet Dillon, the civil rights DOJ leader, said yesterday this is a civil rights issue. Mike, have you looked into this whole situation? I mean, what do you see happening on the world stage here with this?
Well, I think it's very interesting. First of all, I have great respect for Harmeet Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
She's very competent, very smart, very experienced in civil rights law, and had her own law firm in California where she brought many lawsuits successfully regarding civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in addition to the criminal charges filed against the man who killed the Ukrainian woman, there's the other area of what civil action could be taken by the government for violation of civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
There are numerous laws that I don't have a command of that prohibit discrimination based on certain things like race and gender, but basically, government exists to enforce or protect people's rights as defined in the Constitution, as defined in statutes. So the real issue becomes really twofold. One is, where does one civil rights begin and somebody else's end?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take transgender, for example. The transgenders who the males who want to compete in women's sports because they say they're women, say it's a violation of their civil rights not to be allowed to do so. The women who have biological males competing against them say it's a violation of their civil rights. So who's going to decide or determine who's right? And that's a matter of those definitions are provided by Congress and statutes, and by the courts interpreting the statutes and the Constitution. And sometimes it's not really clear one way or the other how to decide. But in the case of this Ukrainian woman, she's on public transportation. Evidently, the federal government has chosen to impose criminal to pass criminal laws imposing criminal penalties for crimes committed on public transportation. This is sort of similar to civil rights laws requiring public accommodations like restaurants to be able to discriminate and so forth. But what's happened here is Harvey Dillon through the Civil Rights Division is evidently going to come in addition to the criminal charges. So you have a U.S. attorney prosecuting the crime, but you got Harvey Dillon prosecuting the Civil Rights Division violations, at least investigating them. And one significance of that is that it becomes very broad then. It's like who's conspiring or causing this person to be like that, to be able to commit that crime, and to what extent are they culpable?
That was my question, because this guy's obviously judgment proof. He has no assets. He's just a thug, 14 times arrested. But the train system in the city, I mean, can a pressure be applied to these laws that way, do you think?
I think so. First of all, funding can be cut or threatened to be cut. And of course, you see that already where, like universities where President Trump is cutting money, and it makes sense logically. It's like, we don't have to give you any money. If we're going to give you money, there's going to be conditions on it. One is not to violate people's civil rights, not to be anti-Semitic, and keep students from being able to attend without fear their classes. So it's the same thing. You should be able to get on public transportation. But the real fascinating issue to me is how far is this going to extend? Because what you have are liberal judges and prosecutors not prosecuting, or just letting the same criminals out. And let me just draw an analogy. We know there was a judge in, I think, Wisconsin who actually was removed from the bench and is being prosecuted for helping an illegal immigrant to escape. So that was a very overt interference with one violation of criminal law, violation of immigration law. But secondly, arguably, it's interfering with my civil right not to have this person who's, if he was a criminal, especially out threatening the population. So there's going to be a lot of litigation as a result of an aggressive civil rights division. By the way, Harriet Dillon, I saw an interview with her where she said that a large number, like hundreds, I think, of lawyers in the civil rights divisions quit. As soon as the first meeting, she said that our agenda is, we're going to enforce President Trump's agenda, and if you don't want to do that, you should leave, and they did. And she's actually shorthanded. She was shorthanded so much that she actually, I heard her say, basically, look, if you got a lawyer out there who's interested in this subject, please come and contact us, even if they have no experience. So she's got her hands full because all the civil rights division scope is going to be broader than even the criminal scope. Because criminal laws are narrower. Let me tell you how effective this can be. In my town, there were 6 women came to me. I'm in a town 20 miles from Charleston, and they complained that they were being sexually harassed and discriminated against and racially harassed. 3 of them were Black in their fire department. And I had them fill out affidavits detailing all this. And then I gave it to the town council, wouldn't do anything. So I went to Washington and had a seminar, a continuing legal education seminar about, I guess, civil rights. In the question and answer session, I stood up and said, anybody got any experience with a small southern town? And I described what was happening. The head of the Civil Rights Division walked up to me and gave me his card. And when I provided the information in the affidavits, they did like over a year investigation that wound up with the fire chief resigning and a bunch of changes being implemented. So this is an example where there's statutory authority for the Civil Rights Division to do investigations and impose some kind of penalties. I don't know the details of how this works. It's a specialized area of the law. But Harmeet Dillon is very smart. She knows what the law is capable of doing, and they're going to push to enforce people's civil rights, and rightly so. So what this comes down to now, I used to struggle myself with, like, well, to what extent should my views be imposed on somebody else? I have a lot more clarity about this now. Our American creed is embodied in our founding documents, like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. It's based on Judeo-Christian values. And look, you can live and let live. If you want to have your whatever you want to do as an adult, okay, but don't infringe on my rights and my culture and our values. And that's exactly what's happening when unvetted illegals are allowed in our country.
Yeah.
They have mental deficiencies, like this person is said to be schizophrenic. And then you have liberal judges and district attorneys who wind up not incarcerating the people that are committing violent crimes and releasing them so they can kill people like this woman yesterday.
Well, so that could be really the key that picks the lock to stop a lot of this Soros-funded DA issues where they're not prosecuting and all that. You know, there's been a lot of criticism of the civil rights law in the last year or so because of people are saying it enabled a lot of this, you know, enforcing your ideology on others over the last couple decades. But maybe this can be used against that as well.
Well, it's a political decision how much to enforce and how to interpret certain laws. I mean, the law is imperfect, so and not only that, my civil rights and your civil rights may be, in your view, may be clashing.
Yeah.
So we have courts that interpret it. We have just government officials like district attorneys, but we have, in my view, a conservative government now. And Harmeet Dillon is implementing President Trump's agenda, and his agenda includes getting violent people off the street, and not subjecting innocent people like this young girl that just got killed to the threats of violent criminals being on the loose and mentally ill, evidently. So
well, that just, you know, if you watch, there's more of the video out of her actually getting killed, and it's horrific. I mean, it made me sick. People need to watch that and understand what's happening. It's not just some, you know, incident on the train. I mean, this was, I mean, she's sitting there crying and she's dying. I mean, it's bad.
Evidently, she knows she's dying. Nobody's helping her. Nobody's applying pressure. And what's also angering to me is the inconsistent, hypocritical way the press treats us, the mainstream.
Yeah.
So if that had been a white person doing it to a black, it would have been nonstop national news. Because it's a black against a white, it doesn't fit their narrative, and they basically ignore it. And when they don't ignore it, they frame it differently, like Trump's trying to exploit this, and this kind of thing. So the real story, according to the leftist media, the mainstream media, is not that she got killed by an illegal that was released repeatedly after being arrested. Instead, that it's being advertised or talked about.
Yeah.
So it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was. I you know, I know the Ukrainians well, and they're good people, and that's just horrific. Mike, thank you very much for your time. I kind of made you work today, so sorry about that. Take care. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things. homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right? The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy. You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right. You know that.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We're producing on the fly here. Hold on one second. We're getting Kurt Brackob in. Just a little bit of technical difficulties, but he'll be here shortly. I want to talk real quick about, hold on, let me just send this, about Christmas. Gifts are coming, and one place you can go is mypillow.com. Use promo code CDM, a lot there. Look through all their products. I want to highlight one, the slippers. If you go to My Slippers, and you look at all these, people love them. They're fantastic. We get a lot of good comments. So go to mypillow.com, look for Christmas gifts, use promo code CDM. And I see Kurt Brackob is in the green room, and I'm going to bring him in. Kurt, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining me this morning. Sorry about the mix-up.
All right. Good to see you, Todd.
Good to see you. Well, what's going on in History of Books? A lot happening, I understand.
Oh, yeah. We're in the process of moving our distribution to Simon & Schuster as of January 1st. So a lot of work to be done there. So we'll share a distributor with one of our big competitors, Skyhorse. And we just acquired a UK company, which has given us, and together with another US publisher, Forefront Books, have created a publishing entity called the Unified Publishing Group, which is going to it's giving us a international distribution operation of our very own, which of course we'll be able to help other publishers as well with that, but to distribute in the UK, Europe, and really the rest of the world outside the US and Canada, where we're working with Simon & Schuster. So it's a really great opportunity and a lot of growth for our company right now, and a lot of work to get it done.
Yeah, I know you've been extremely busy. So it's historyofbooks.com for our people there. You can look for our joint venture, Vindicta Publishing, on one of their many, many imprints. I didn't realize you have a Christian imprint, you have children's, you have a
Yep.
lot of stuff, right? I mean,
Pretty much for the whole family.
So we were talking about Christmas gifts there for a minute. Go to historyofbooks.com. Wow, and look at Vindicta Publishing and all over history of fiction, history of Christian, all of that. You can find some fantastic gifts. We're always looking for the gift for that someone who has everything. And I can tell you that History of Books is a great place to start. Let me ask you, I wanted to get you on, but first let's talk Ukraine and Poland.
Sure.
I'm getting text in here right now that maybe this whole drone incursion into Poland, which happened overnight, allegedly with, up to 20 or so Russian drones, may have been and the Kremlin just came out and said we didn't have the range for that. It may have been a provocation, kind of a false flag attack with Ukraine sending in drones into Poland. Have you heard anything or seen anything? What's your thoughts on what happened last night?
I haven't heard or seen anything specific about it myself, other than the incursion. But my initial thought is that this smells of a Ukrainian false flag operation, because we've seen these before. It's not the first, and it's just like trying to trigger Article 5. What this is all about, and there's no reason Moscow would want to do something like that. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, other than if there was some sort of error or something that, uncontrolled, unintentional error or something. But it's obviously being used by Zelensky and his people, and
Europe.
A lot of the Poles in Europe, of course, that are those that are on the side of trying to escalate this war.
You're right. It smacks of desperation because they're losing the war on the ground, so they've got to get NATO involved. So okay, let's cause a false flag, send a bunch of drones into Poland, and they were ready with the narrative. I mean, immediately Tusk is out there. We got to call Article 4. We got to have NATO involved. We're getting attacked. Russia's doing it intentionally, and it's a massive drone attack. It was a few surveillance drones that flew around on the border essentially, and then were shot down. So it wasn't, and even Belarus is coming out today and saying we told them it was coming. So fascinating. But they were ready. I put out a piece this morning called 99 Red Balloons. I don't know if you remember that song in the 80s. This is it, boys. This is war. That's what it reminded me of. I mean, we finally got a war. But what about Serbia? Talk to me what's going on there. There's it's a color revolution, right?
It's 100%. This is being orchestrated from Brussels, essentially. I mean, you saw that there's massive. They've had some large protests in certain cities, which have a lot of foreign money behind them, and which have a lot of foreign involvement. You've had actually leaders of the European Green Party who've taken part in these protests on the streets, and you see just the clamor out of Brussels, and they're the EPP, which of course is the controlling party in Brussels, the globalists, and which, interestingly enough, Vucic's party was part of that alliance in the European Parliament. They're talking about expelling them from there as well. So and then that's a lesson for the Serbians to learn. You get in bed with the wrong people, it's never going to come out the way you want it. You cannot appease these kind of people by trying to create the globalists, essentially by trying to create alliances with them. When you do that, they just use it as an in to get inside your system, your country, your party, whatever, to oust you and put in their own people. They're never a friend or an ally. They're always a mole inside, trying to overthrow you.
Good way to put it. So Vucic has been trying to kind of walk a line between the two sides, right? I mean, he's not gone after Russia with the sanctions and that kind of stuff, but he's also kept the door open to the EU, as he said. What is the EU really? I mean, they want him gone, I know, but was there something he did that they really dislike?
They don't like the fact. I mean, there's several things they don't like. First of all, they don't like not adopting the entire globalist agenda, which they're pretty consistent on. So I mean, the whole LGBT stuff has to be 100% adopted for them to be satisfied, and even then they wouldn't be, because they'll find something else. But they so they won't respect Serbian traditional values and culture and things like that. They don't like the Serbs to begin with, because they already have taken half of Serbia and created this artificial country, from it. And at the same time, because, Serbia has traditionally had a strong alliance with friendship, let's call it, or whatever you want to say, but with Russia. Russia had played an important part in Serbian history, in supporting Serbia at different times in its history. And, they just see that Vučić is part of that more traditional Serbian policy, which is to be open to cooperation with Russia. And of course, you and I both know the hard line in Brussels is, there is no cooperation with Russia. And ultimately what they want to do is overthrow Russia and carve it up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So,
well, it's also a Christian country in the Balkans, which they don't like.
Of course, anything to do with Christianity, they don't.
Do people really, I don't think Americans understand what really happened in the Serbian-Kosovo war and the outcome. Can you give us, an top level overview of actually what they did?
What NATO did?
What happened during that whole, Yugoslav conflict?
Well, what happened in that particular part was, they've traditionally been stirring, because Kosovo had a fairly, significant Albanian population. They were stirring up trouble there to try to, break it off as they were breaking up Yugoslavia altogether, with, Croatia separating Slovenia. All these different countries went their own ways. The last one was Kosovo, which was a very important province historically for Serbia. It's considered the heart of Serbia, the heart of the Serbian people. And of course, they wanted to destroy that as well. So a lot of foreign money and arms went into Serbia or into Kosovo, essentially to support, separation from Serbia or Yugoslavia at the time, at first. And they spent a lot of money and arms, and then it was a bloody war. In war, war crimes happen on both sides. There's has a monopoly on those. It's just the reality of conflict like that.
Yeah.
But of course, our media and our president at the time, Clinton, used that as an opportunity to, follow the agenda that they were carving out, this globalist agenda, and what they wanted to do in the Balkans was to carve it up. So they followed that agenda, and they went on and actually, declared that Serbia is the sole villain, just like they did in, at the end of World War II or World War I, when they declared, Germany was to blame for everything in World War I. It's the same.
Yeah.
Serbia was to blame. So then they started bombing the capital of Belgrade, which of course, which was extremely interesting because NATO is supposed to be a defensive alliance, and Serbia was not a NATO member or anything of it. So this was clearly an offensive action by NATO, showing, and this is also what triggers in Russia's mind now, when they're looking at NATO as a threat to them on their border, is because NATO's proven they're a threat to anyone.
Yeah. An offensive alliance, not defensive.
Exactly.
And I think you're right. There's going to be, we're seeing a lot of disclosure now. Stuff's coming out on 9/11. I think it's going to go back, into World War II and beyond as to actually what happened, on both sides. I think that's coming. So you're the editor of TheBalkan.press, which is one of our great, unique publications at CDM. But what else is happening in your world that you want people to know?
We just had a new release come out, which I think is very important, in our joint venture here in Vindicta Publishing with the book by Kelly O'Meara on
we had her on recently.
Well, Psyched Out, which is, given that we just saw another of these shootings by a trans activist in Minneapolis recently. And of course, the drugs and everything. She talks in this book a lot about these school shooters and how these drugs that they put them on are messing with their mind. Not only the ones related to the trans movement, but also just these psychotic drugs that have been used for decades. So Still Psyched Out is a really important book, and it couldn't be more timely given everything that's going on. And I would definitely recommend that people would watch the interview that you have posted up there with Kelly.
Yep.
that's a good one. And then, of course, you've got the books up there, and Ukraine is another excellent one right now, given everything that's going on, to understand really how that war started. And Thierry is a frequent guest on CDM, of course.
Yes, he is.
And just talking about, he's an expert on Ukraine and how that war all started and everything. And it's interesting. And just talk about things that are going on. I woke up this morning and was looking at the news, and you see, France, and I know you've had people on talking about this, but France is a total mess today. I mean, right now there are riots on the streets of Paris.
Yeah, I forgot to thank you for mentioning that, because I had it in the cold open and I forgot to talk about that. Riots over some of the budget cuts. I mean, essentially Macron and his cronies ran up the debt, and now they have to cut the budget just to stay solvent, or at least try to stay in power. And the people don't like it. So we were talking with Thierry yesterday, I think, on when are the Yellow Jackets coming back. So we may be seeing that. But what about the UK? You spend a lot of time over there. Are we going to have a civil war in the UK? What do you think?
I'm heading over there on Sunday, so I'll have a better perspective on that next week on the ground. I mean, the UK is a tough situation, because it's like all these other European countries, especially in the West, that have imported these foreign populations, mainly Muslim, and you're seeing the same thing in France and in the UK, but this whole idea of multiculturalism, which globalists push, is destructive to society. I mean, ultimately, it's a failed concept that doesn't work and just promotes disharmony and can lead to a civil war in a country, because you have such divergent views of the world. There's no way to make, a country has to have some sort of social and cultural cohesion, and multiculturalism undermines that.
Yes, for sure.
For it. And that's why the UK is in the situation it is. But it's definitely something, we can talk more about when I'm on the ground to have a better.
Yeah, we'll get some live reporting from Kurt Brackob from London or wherever you're going to be.
Go.
Appreciate it, Kurt. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you last minute. It's in this show, we always are driven by the news cycle. So it's like, who can I get on to talk about this? And you're always a go-to guy. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, Todd. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7. I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free, or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down, and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
Angelican's marching home again. Hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then. Hurrah, hurrah, all the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out and will all.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Got more for you today. We're going to have Euro Bytes team on shortly, but I want to walk through some stories. This one is up on CDM.press, and this is one I was talking about, 99 red balloons. The Europeans, especially the Poles, Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, really, really, really wants a war. And we're going to dig into this theory that this drone attack, allegedly on Poland by Russia, was a false flag out of Ukraine because they are desperate. And they were just, Tusk was too ready with the narrative, like calling NATO Article 4, et cetera, et cetera. So we will dig into that one. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but we want to get to the truth. But we find it ridiculous that they are saying this is a major attack. And we've got a very lengthy article on what's going on in Poland and on the issue and the incident and the response to it on CDM. And at the bottom, I don't know if you're my age, but the song 99 Red Balloons, panic lads, it's a red alert. There's something here from somewhere else. The war machine springs to life, opens up one eager eye. This is what we've waited for. This is it, boys. This is war. Now it's all over, and I'm standing pretty in this dust that was a city. So you can check out that video from my college days. But anyway, it reminded me of that whole thing. So check it out. This story is interesting. The first stage of Hezbollah disarmament is supposed to be completed by the end of the year. As we said before, the Lebanese army is 40% Shia. There's going to have to be some kind of deal. They're not going to take it from Hezbollah by force, but it could be folded into the Lebanese army, the armaments to be used for protection of the state. That's probably the way this is going to go forward. We're talking to our team on the ground over there. We're going to be putting out more on Lebanon and what's happening soon. We'll be back there next month for a conference on sustainability of Christianity in the Middle East. So stay tuned for that. We'll be doing a lot of cool reporting next month, later in the month on that. But this is very interesting what's happening in Lebanon. And we're hopeful, but we want the Christians to be protected primarily. Now, another story, Catherine Herridge came out last night with a film that 9/11, that the Saudi employees were casing out Washington, D.C., long prior to 9/11 for a target list. This is, I think, probably what people already knew, but the timing of this is interesting because there's going to be a lot of disclosures on 9/11, and we're going to watch the narrative shifting, the information war that goes on this, because as all this comes out, there's going to be people trying to manage the outcome of the disclosures across the board, from J6 to 9/11 to even back, as I said, with Kurt, back to World War II. There's been a lot we've been told that is not true. And I think it's incumbent upon every American to dig for the truth. And you can find the truth here on CDM because we'll be bringing it as fast as we can. But this story is up on CDM and you can read about it. But there's also a video that she put out, which is there as well. So spend some time on that if you're interested. But I think there's a lot more to come here. Now, Israel bombed Qatar yesterday. This is Israel, the Israeli Air Force, without telling the White House, allegedly bombed the nation of Qatar in the Gulf, which has an American air base. And, does that mean that like anybody can bomb Israel if they think there's a terrorist there? Does that mean anybody can bomb the United States? That mean Russia can bomb London if they don't like somebody living in a flat? This is really a slippery slope. Israel, I think, has bitten off more it can chew here. But we'll see. And the Trump right now is not happy and has said so many times. So we'll see how this rolls, but it's extremely interesting. Another article I want to bring to your attention on the Miami Independent, that is the MiamiIndependent.com, which is our wonderful paper down in South Florida, which is very impactful, by the way. Roger Stone writes for us and others. And it's really getting a lot of attention. The right people read it. It needs to get bigger distribution, but the right people read it. Let's put it that way. But the RPOF and the state of Florida has been acting extremely tyrannical. We've cataloged it there at the Miami Independent in depth. But this is a further evidence of that, where they're blocking, public disclosure of certain things going on with the police. And Kat Stansel's been all over this stuff. So she's a prime resource for us. And I would check that out, especially if you're in Florida, or if you think Florida is the gold standard for elections and for governance. It's not. And it just simply is not. I want to also bring up ALP has a new flavor, and we're back on ALP on their platform. We were off for a while because they did a lot of changes. But now that we've gotten all the technology stuff worked out in the back, you can go to cdmalp.com and check out their new spearmint flavor along with the other fantastic flavors. It's much better than Zen. If you're looking for a Christmas present, a stocking stuffer, here you go. Somebody who loves nicotine pouches, you need a stocking stuffer. Get them the spearmint ALP, and I'm guaranteeing you they'll be extremely happy. We are told it's much more moist, much more flavor, better experience, more in the package than Zen. So check out cdmalp.com and all the different flavors at ALP, and we're glad to have their program back up and running. Well, what else? A lot going on. We're going to run a commercial, and then we'll be back, and we've got the Euro Bytes team, and we'll dig into everything that's going on with them. So stand by. Here we go.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slog, slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I appreciate you joining us today. Now we're going to move to our Euro Bytes show, which was a few days ago, but really good discussion on what's going on in the UK. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be back in a little bit and close out the show. But this is one of my favorite get-togethers we have on CDM and talking about Europe, which is a big issue right now. So I hope you enjoy this.
The 24th of August. Apologies that it's been taking us for a while. Obviously, European summer with vacation and all, but a lot had been happening, and Todd obviously has been traveling, gallivanting all throughout the world in the mission to actually shine a light on on a much under discussed topic, the treatment of Christians outside Europe and the Middle East and beyond. So we will very quickly have a talk with Todd as well about his impressions on that. And then so much to talk about Europe in terms of, well, how the mighty have fallen. So there was an iconic picture where you saw all the European leaders a couple of years ago trying to talk sense into Trump, or that's what the picture seemed to suggest, all the European leaders leading into Trump having his arms folded in a defensive way. And you saw, and the implied message of that picture was like, well, the free world trying to talk sense into him, and these fortunes have reversed. We've got a brilliant picture that summarizes that as well. As a matter of fact, Todd, what can we bring it up, that picture? And
hold on, I want to, you know what, I want to give me like 30 seconds. I want to do a before and after.
Yeah, so. Brilliant. I mean, it is beautiful, dear viewers, because I mean, interesting enough, I think we started Euro Bytes roughly shortly before the Ukrainian war started. I think I still remember Todd's Telegram message to this day. Let's try to stop this madness. And yes. Obviously, like so many others, we have failed. Even though we didn't think it was going to start, we did see that a lot of folks wanted that war. We didn't think it was going to happen, but here we are 3 years later, and there was quite a good deal of talk coming out of Europe, a good deal of sanctimoniousness, a good deal of talking themselves up, and a good deal of thinking that they held the cards and they were on the side of sanity, whilst Trump wasn't.
So here we go. This is how it was going a few years ago.
Brilliant. So for those viewers who are just listeners, I'll just narrate you through the picture. We've got Donald Trump sitting and all the other European and non-European leaders standing. And Trump has his arms folded, sort of in a sort of resistant way, and they're talking down to him, like almost like a bunch of adults trying to talk sense into a kid. So that's what that picture is meaning.
And you've even got John Bolton in there, right? For added value.
I wanted to point that out to viewers. So there are a lot of has-beens now on the picture. So there's Angela Merkel leaning in, and there is, I think, the Japanese Prime Minister.
It's Abe, isn't it?
Oh, Abe, yes. I think hasn't he passed away since?
He was assassinated. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the saner leaders on this picture, and it's interesting enough. I mean, that picture conveys more than words could put. He doesn't seem to quite lean into the madness. Instead, he looks skeptical at Merkel.
Yes.
But yes, in the background looms John Bolton. I mean, so much to unpack here in terms of Trump, the Trump 1 and Trump 2 administration. So, if nothing else, the Trump 2 administration has given us slightly more aggressive deportation policies, and at least John Bolton and his ilk removed. I mean, we've got much to criticize, but John Bolton being removed and now writing a sore loser kind of book and giving interviews is rich. But yes.
So this is how it started.
Yes, and now
this is how it's going.
Oh, this is brilliant. So, dear viewers, and the ones who just listeners right now. So as I mentioned to you, there was quite a bit of moral grandstanding. Europeans doing what they love to do, speak smugly to Americans, or typically love to talk down to Americans, especially to an unwanted president like Donald Trump, unwanted from the perspective of the European and globalist elites. Well, I would title this picture as well, how the mighty have fallen. So after we remember, actually, there is a pattern. European leaders screamed murder when Trump closed the borders in 2020 before the COVID crisis. And this is racist, this is everything and such. And then they closed the borders a week later. And then the tariffs came up, and they kind of laughed. They're like, ha, ha, ha. Like, are you aware how much you trade with us? And again, the reversal of the tariffs was like, they realized, well, we mainly sell America luxury goods. Germany is a special case because we actually sell you guys a lot of unsexy stuff that nobody talks about that you actually need. Like, for instance, a lot of the stuff that Dutch company, that Dutch company that creates all the chip material, ASML, is actually done by the German company Carl Zeiss. So Germany is a bit of a special case, but still Germany's heavily dependent on the United States. And suddenly we see all of them seated, Donald Trump sitting at a table, almost looking them down. It's sort of a reverse tribunal. So they are
is an amazing picture.
As supplicants. And not just showing the reversal of the fortune of the tariffs, which had been mocked, but also of the Ukrainian war, where the Europeans were grandstanding and no, it can't happen, and they were frozen out twice. And now in the most blatant version of this, again in Alaska, the summit between Trump and Putin, where, I mean, it is interesting enough. Whenever the Europeans and the past Biden administration did everything to escalate this war, we even had the former head of the UK Armed Forces in an interview in the Telegraph, sort of the conservative or conservative bread and butter newspaper, saying the UK needs to be ready in 5 years to fight Russia. I mean, you can't make it up. It's openly out there. So whenever the Europeans did nothing to de-escalate this war, but whenever Trump tries to actually talk peace, to do peace, and doesn't succeed because we're that too far into that conflict, then he gets mocked. Or, well, you need us. And then very often we see that he doesn't. And again, the deal for the American taxpayer gets better because now the Europeans are paying for the American weapons. And again, far from being Putin's stooge, Trump still defends Ukraine's ability to procure such weapons and not to be defenseless. But at the same time, the Europeans and the Ukrainians are dragging on this war. They need to pay for it themselves, and that's the reversal of the fortunes that we are seeing. Any concluding thoughts on this particular one from you, Tom?
Well, I think it's the Europeans are talking about arming, are talking about putting troops on Ukraine. We just had Meloni come out and say to Macron, okay, you do it, put on a helmet and grab a rifle and go. And so I found that fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of division in Europe, and they don't have the resources to defend Ukraine by themselves. They need the U.S. Trump could end the war tomorrow if he wanted to, just by stopping any delivery of weapons and funding. So it's going to be interesting to see how this closes out. I'm optimistic because I think Trump really wants it. Yep. That's the reason why. We'll see. I think there's a lot of business deals to be done in Alaska. I think that move was brilliant. It showed the Europeans we don't need you. Yep. We're 2 kilometers away from Alaska, from Russia ourselves. So we're closer than Berlin and in Paris and in London. So we can do it ourselves. That was the message I took away from that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is interesting enough if we remember the peace deal that Putin actually has suggested, I think since March, is it 2022, when the first ceasefire was on the table, and in the last moment Boris Johnson flew to Kiev and the deal was off the table. But essentially the Russians request 3 things. So A, all the oblasts that were being shelled by the Ukrainians for years will become fully Russians. Ukraine stays out of NATO, and there is one, and I think those are the 2 non-negotiables for Russia. Full stop.
Yeah.
Not into NATO, and actually, protecting ethnic Russians. So the one part where I would still see actual room, but that nobody talks about, is the third part where the Russians want the Ukrainian army massively reduced, and that's why I'm saying, well, in all honesty, that's where I'm sympathetic to the Ukrainians, where I'm like, no. I mean, they shouldn't be this heavily militarized de facto failed state that they are right now, but they need a decent army, and much larger than what the Russians are suggesting. That would be an interesting bargaining chip. But what are the Europeans doing? Until recently, the Europeans are still screaming, we need the Crimea back, which has happened in 2014. And again, the historical background of Crimea, which the Europeans treat like it's always been secret part of the Ukrainian heartland. And no, Crimea had been handed to what was then the Ukrainian SSR by Khrushchev in, I think, the 1960s. So it's not like it's like super historical land, and it doesn't help at this point when you don't hold the cards to ask for territory that you'd lost like more than 11 years ago. So let's see how this pans out.
Completely agree. I I'm hopeful, but we'll see.
Yeah, let's hope, and I hope that the one thing that is still an obstacle to peace is getting the Ukrainian armed forces in a size, in a number of equipment that makes it realistic that they can defend themselves without being this behemoth, which is way outsized to the actual size of the country. Probably before we get into Todd's travels to Beirut, Armenia, and the fate of the Christians there, an interesting Christian note from the United Kingdom. I'll try to share something which is the term right now the flag revolution.
Yes, talk about that. I'm interested in that. Is that going to have any effect?
Kingdom. Let's see. I'll scroll down a bit whilst you can share it. So we're, dear viewers, what we are seeing is an English street, and it should be entirely normal thing. There are little St. George's flags blowing in the wind. And so for those of you who are actually not aware of the St. George's flag, it's red and white, and there's the occasional Union Jack. But the St. George's flag, after St. George, the Dragon Slayer, the saint, is just the flag for England. So the Union Jack that most of you know is actually an amalgamation of the flags of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and England. And so I can unshare. And so this flag is actually interesting. So it should be non-contentious to fly the flag in your own country. Now, in the United Kingdom, there are only a couple of states within the United Kingdom that are proudly allowed to fly their own flag. It's not so much frowned upon if the Welsh do it, small country, and if the Scots do it. Northern Ireland is a particular case because it's not united, so let's bracket them out. But for the Scots and the Welsh, it's okay. For the English, it's sort of almost frowned upon. And there was a UK politician who traveled home from a highfalutin conference and drove through a constituency where there are plenty, through a working class neighborhood, there were plenty of white vans. White vans are synonymous with tradesmen in the United Kingdom, and lots of St. George's flag, particularly before football games. Remember, even if you've got international football tournaments, it's not the British team that's playing, it's Wales has their own team, Scotland has their own team, England has their own team, Northern Ireland has their own team. And so when you are in England and the football team is playing, St. George's flags are flying everywhere, but it's sort of frowned upon by the elite. So if you're English, you're not really allowed to be nationalistic. That's for the tiny, cutesy little states like Scotland and Wales. And so something has happened where suddenly in the town, the city of Birmingham, where I used to live for a while, not Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham, England, one of the powerhouses of the Industrial Revolution, the city hall of Birmingham was illuminated in the Pakistani colors to celebrate Pakistani Independence Day. Now, you must know Birmingham as a city is majority non-white and is in the meantime majority Muslim. And suddenly, all over England, St. George's flags started popping up in Birmingham, in other places which are 80% migrant dominated, like Tower Hamlets near London. And they even started, these roundabouts that you find all over England when you weave into traffic. It's not traffic lights, it's these little roundabouts that very often throw off foreigners. And even they started being painted in the St. George's cross. And a lot of councils have taken issue with that. So they started removing the flags, but of course, only for security reasons. because they might obscure traffic lights, which was nonsense,
Yeah.
because mainly they're flying from lampposts. And some councils have criticized wanton vandalism of roundabouts with the St. George's flag. Now, if you saw the roundabouts before they were painted, the paint was peeled off, particularly in the greater Birmingham area. Birmingham has a massive financial problem where they were subject to an equal pay suit, as you know, in the United States, where quite often it was alleged that women were not paid the same as men, even though their jobs substantially differed that they did. But nonetheless, the city of Birmingham included for £1 billion payout. And I had lived towards the tail end of that in Birmingham, and then suddenly the trash pickup started happening rather infrequent, and potholes started popping up. But yes, the city of Birmingham still can invest resources to hang down flags, which prompted some of the pranksters as well to start painting potholes in the St. George's flag, in the hope that they were going to start getting filmed, and there's tons of good meme material. So something is definitely happening in England, and a form of civil disobedience. Yeah, probably
is that the beginning of the British or English desire to not commit suicide, or will this just pass by as another?
One would hope. I mean, the people who were involved in all that flag stuff, quite often climbing up quite high up certain buildings and such, often assaulted by ethnic majorities living in these neighborhoods, and were mostly young men. And I mean, they're always the black pillars who say, well, this is just symbolism. You guys hoist a bunch of flags and you think you're winning, but in the meantime, your border is still wide open. And that is true. But at the same time, I think it seems to signal to people you're not alone. And for me, it was really interesting. I lived in a sort of formerly entire working class neighborhood, a little outside of Birmingham, you know, these like little red brick, endless terraced houses that you see from the movies. And many of my neighbors had been born in those houses. The houses had been built in early 1900s. And wherever, and then you get the generational turnover in these neighborhoods where you have like urban hipsters or young, well, not so young professionals like myself moving in. But then you can almost see which houses around the Football World Cup or the Soccer World Cup and the Soccer Euro Cup are not flying the St. George's Cross. And the more you, or who are not English. I mean, there were lots of academics in that area, Canadians and whatnot, and they didn't fly the St. George's Cross. So let's see. I think it's a powerful symbol for folks to show they're not alone, and increasingly they're defying the police, which ties into another bit that
Let me ask you, what happened with the traffic camera where they were cutting down the cameras?
Yeah.
Is that still happening?
Yes, that's still happening. So for American viewers, I think there are even some American cities that want to introduce the ultra-low emission zones and the 15-minute cities. And I mean, the city of Oxford had started that, where essentially you got charged heavily if your license plate was caught driving beyond a certain 15-minute parameter. And a lot of these cameras had been sabotaged, stolen, sprayed over. Yes, so I hadn't heard of that for a while, but that very, very quickly got very expensive. And it ties into an issue that is very interesting. So remember, recently there was a whole spate of, almost every day there was a new spate of sexual assault on young English girls and people demonstrating in front of the migration centers. And many of these migration centers got actually shut down by the council in reaction. And then obviously people who had successfully shut down the migration center and their neighborhood started following the police. And then lo and behold, the migrants were put up in a 4-star hotel in Canary Wharf, which is one of London's preeminent financial services quarters. So a very desirable hotel to stay in, a very expensive hotel to stay in. But again, people are protesting, and it's happening all over the country, and it's not stopping. much as it is underreported in the mainstream media, and much as people are being smeared as far-right activists, but it's no longer working. And I mean, there is one dirty little secret about policing. Policing only works when probably 99 or at least 90% of all citizens are law-abiding.
Right.
And so far, in the United Kingdom, and I guess in the United States, that has only been white Christians who had been entirely law-abiding, who accepting that there is a two-tier justice here and in the United States. I mean, just remember the summer of Floyd and such, how a lot of folks got off free after having vandalized and looted buildings, and were the broader majority that resisted, or even somebody like the former Marine Mr. Penny, who saved other passengers in the metro in New York, the underground in New York, was then facing trial. And but yeah, increasingly the law-abiding majority that never gets its will, whereas the other side, when it riots, always seems to get its will. Increasingly, they are resisting. And I mean, very often you did see the police cracking down very decisively on the people with the flags. But the more it's happening, they can't. I mean, it's just a numbers game, which might bring us to the conspiracy theory. Probably it's not that much of a conspiracy theory. What has been a conspiracy theory in this year 2025? Let's put always a question mark in, but the conspiracy theory as well. There are 160,000 policemen in the United Kingdom, but we're kind of importing that almost in terms of illegal young men in best military age. So let's see what's going to happen if they're going to be employed as auxiliary policemen. I wouldn't put it beyond the possible. So I hope this is as far-fetched as it sounds, but a lot of other things that we thought were conspiracy theories a couple of years ago are not. So this is interesting, and that leads me over probably at a more interesting way. And I'm going to share another video for something more fundamental at the more intellectual end of right-wing thought, right-wing resistance. I'm going to share the screen as well. So let me know when you can see it. And it is of a conference of one of the sort of patron saint of British conservatism, really an amazing man, Roger Scruton, probably still the old caliber of conservative that still holds certain truths and certain very liberal truths for self-evident. And he's still the patron saint, and all the modern, quote unquote, conservatives, sort of rhino Republicans, or our version of that, travel to that. And there was an interesting debate. So right now, the standard bearers of mainstream conservatism, the likes of what would be the National Review in the United States, is the newspaper The Spectator. So it positions itself as center-right, but it's run by a guy who, in my opinion, is a liberal, an all but name, called Fraser Nelson. And in this video, it's about basic identity politics, the question of, well, who is an Englishman? And let's see what they have to say. Can you hear the volume, Todd?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay, good.
What's ridiculous?
You think you can teach someone English?
Yes, of course you can. That's how we all learn it.
To wait for the pub after to discuss if you can teach them the English.
No, it's not.
I think this might be a discussion for after the conference.
So there's something really interesting, and for a non-European listener or a person who hasn't spent a lot of time in the UK, there's plenty of interesting subtext here. So first of all, what was being said? So where somebody said, "This is ridiculous," from the crowd, and you had the main bigwigs on the stage, like Fraser Nelson and all the white-haired standard bearers of mainstream conservatism, and then one of them asked, "What's ridiculous?" And then somebody from the crowd explained, and he said, "No, of course it can be learned. I learned how to be English," because somebody from the crowd must have said, "Well, you can't learn to be English. This is ridiculous." And then he said, "Well, of course it isn't. I learned to be English." And then you had like the guy with sort of a very arrogant accent So no, of course it is. Of course it is. Sort of speaking down with this sort of received pronunciations of BBC. Of course it is. Whereas the younger crowd, and so the young man who is the presenter of this podcast, a very gifted young man called Connor Tomlinson, who's narrating through that, is making exactly that point. It was the young Zoomers in the crowd who says, why do we even pretend people set their foot here and we teach them how to be English, and whoop-de-doo, within a year they're more English than orange marmalade and fish and chips and such. And this is something that in our German-speaking podcast we've been discussing for a while as well, where conservatism and mainstream politics has gone through a couple of interesting mutations over the last couple of years. So first it was, well, of course they need to be integrated. We need to do more for integration. Even the left used to say that. And then suddenly integration became racist, and even the mainstream conservatism backed off for a while. And then suddenly we're seeing everything that's not working. I mean, rampant sexual assault.
This is a special report. Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
I'm watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition, and sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I mean, even, there was another case of a Sudanese migrant trying to lure an 8-year-old away from the playground, and only her dad stepped in last moment. And so where we see it blatantly obvious that certain things are not working, and violence. By the way, an American, very brave American, was stabbed in the city of Dresden because he tried to prevent prevent sexual assault on a woman by a Middle Eastern migrant who then knifed him. So it became abundantly clear, even to mainstream conservatives, that something wasn't working, and they're back now. Whoa, we need to reintegrate them. And their hero in the United Kingdom is a lady of Indian descent, Mrs. Birbal Singh, who runs a school in London that is, 99% of migrant background, where at least you see her making a bunch of girls with headscarves from around the world and all these kind of very strange looking, for European looking costumes, saying, I vow to thee, my country, or God save the Queen. And whilst that's laudable and her heart's in the right place, I mean, increasingly we're like, well, what is it really worth? I mean, just by the mere fact that they learn to sing a bunch of English songs, are they going to be Englishmen? And you see time and again the response is no. And whenever push comes to shove in a public debate, you find somebody saying, well, I came here from say Uganda 10 years ago, and I'm very proud, and I've now gotten the passport. I'm a very proud Englishman, but I don't think that St. George's flag speaks for all of us. It's outdated because it's Christian. But probably over to you, Todd.
No, it's just I'm doing a show, so thank you. I had to deal with something there. Go ahead.
Not to worry, but yeah, I think you got the gist. Sort of the debate is on in terms of what is an Englishman, and probably for the Americans that's just as an interesting a question as well. But yeah, question being, what is it to be an Englishman? Can you learn to be an Englishman? Can you teach people to be an Englishman? And then I'm like, well, then, there are various angles on that. Well, once they start knifing people or committing sexual assault on young girls, or trying to lure 8-year-olds away from playgrounds, I don't see a way how you could ever make these individuals Englishmen. But even the ones, and that's the vast majority, to be fair, that are not criminal or sexual assailants, when you do surveys on every single aspect of what they think, for instance, about free speech, they're miles away from the classic Anglo-Saxon take on that. I mean, we see the same in the United States. Once certain Silicon Valley companies were under the leadership of folks from the Indian subcontinent, suddenly free speech wasn't as big an issue anymore.
So it's not working, and it hasn't worked for some time. So what do you think? Are people going to buy this, or are they going to? I mean, you have to start deportations, right? I mean, that's what has to happen. So,
I mean, yes. So, I mean, the interesting thing in England is you first need to stop the bleeding and the reverse bleeding, as it were.
Yes.
Well, no, actually, the bleeding goes both ways. You've got a lot of Englishmen and women escaping England, either to Scotland. It's an under-discussed bit, and I'm trying to do some empirical work, because what we're noticing in and around Scotland is a massive building boom, whilst obviously the Scottish birth rate is not a baby boom at all.
You have those migrant camps. We did a show last fall. There were 300 of them so far in Scotland that are hidden from the public.
They're pretty hidden from the public. I mean, it's interesting enough. I mean, it reflects the story in the United States. There's always the same communities that are being hit with it. So, for instance, the hardest hit cities are always the ones that get the most of them. I mean, there is a city that personally very near and dear to me is Dundee, a beautiful old city once known for its 3 industries. Jut, which is what you used to make like these old coffee sacks from jute, jam, the kind of orange marmalade, and journalism. And all these 3 industries have been annihilated. They also used to do quite a bit of whaling in the past. And it's a beautiful city, the sunniest city in Scotland, which says very little, but it's quite sunny by Scottish standards. And they've been dumping them left, right, and center. The city of Aberdeen, which had been a very affluent city until just a couple of years ago, because that's the center of the Scottish oil industry. After all the drilling concessions and explorations were frozen by the Scottish government because they want something more quote unquote sustainable, that city has been, and we have friends there, has been going down the drain at a rate that makes your head spin. So, I mean, folks who might be listening in from Houston might know this. Very often when you fly in contractors into Houston before they get flown out to the various offshore platforms, you put them up in hotels, and they get generously expensed. Now suddenly, with the oil industry plummeting, all these hotels are empty. Well, guess whom you're dumping in these areas, and guess what that means for public security. And it's the same, pretty much the who's who of Scottish cities that isn't doing too well. I mean, Glasgow, lots of other cities that folks won't have heard of. Dunfermline. Some listeners might know Dunfermline because I think that's where Andrew Carnegie is from. they had them dumped there. But if you live in more affluent areas, the affluent parts of Glasgow, there certainly Edinburgh is still a pretty affluent city and surrounding areas, you are not noticing it as much. So they don't dare to put it where middle-class people live, who are organized, who are networks, who are either lawyers or who know a lawyer who actually can write their member of parliament. And then, it's going on, and I'm hearing it all over the place in Scotland, even though it's nowhere near as bad as England. I mean, in England, obviously, in Scotland, at least you've got a population that's still proud to be Scottish. Whereas in England, many English have been so demoralized that they weren't even allowed to be proud to be English. But yes, so Scotland is interesting because they're not feeling it as badly. I don't see. Well, that being said, there was a demonstration at a town near Glasgow called Falkirk, and the first anti-migrant hotel demonstration. I would have never thought that was possible because Scotland is still a thoroughly leftist political constituency. But England, definitely, the resistance is forming. There are small victories because now people start understanding, let's just do what the migrant or the people of migrant descent communities have been doing for years, get organized, apply pressure, and the police very quickly gets quite lazy. So you did see them cracking down heavily on some folks hanging up flags. And then you saw another picture with a lot of burly young men hanging up flags, and the police just drove past that. I mean, it's a very opportunistic kind of target environment. So it is interesting. We are seeing resistance forming. We're seeing particularly the Zoomers waking up, challenging the current equivalent of the Rhino Republicans. So this is promising. But Todd, you rightfully put the finger in the wound. Well, that may all be well and good, but what's happening with migration? And both legal and illegal migration are at almost record highs. I mean, close to the million again in terms of legal. And I think probably 60,000 illegals coming over the channel in small boats this year. And you would think if you're an island nation with a still very good navy, that would be pretty easy to nip this in the bud. But no. It's not happening, and politicians are hand-wringingly coming up with red herrings in terms of, well, we're going to send 100 of them to Rwanda. That'll be a deterrent. And, I mean, it just doesn't work that way. It needs, if you think, rather than being able to deport all of them, if you think you're just sending a couple of numbers of them away to like Papua New Guinea as Australia does, then it needs to be in high numbers that folks would be like, oh God, this actually is a thing, rather than, yeah, I'm not going to be one of the 0.1% to whom that's going to happen. So let's see, the bleeding hasn't been stopped, and whatever happens needs to be measured. Can we stop the bleeding? At the same time, we've got a prime minister that shows how dumbed down the left has become, because he's literally picking fights with everyone. He's picking fights with the pensioners, he's picking fights with the farmers, he's picking fights, now with the main English population that doesn't want more migration. He's even picking fights with large parts of the migrant communities because...
Well, he's just an actor. He's just doing what he's told, right? So he's not, he's not a legitimate leader, I don't think.
I mean, for me, it is interesting. Every now and then, well, yes, I think he ultimately is a puppet that has been installed there, but I don't think he's doing what he's meant to do as a puppet, because every now and then the puppet master Tony Blair comes through and kind of almost whispers into his ear what to do. Well, we need to clamp down a bit more migration. And actually, to his credit, Tony Blair in his days after he opened up the borders, he kind of turned it back. And whenever Tony Blair had the feeling, I mean, he was the classical Fabian, burning the frog slowly, whereas Keir Starmer is not a leader, and he's kind of zigzagging. I mean, we've seen that again even with the Democrat presidential material, that and even in where you first had one guy that was too it is certainly advantageous if a guy is demented, because he's a non-figure. You can do what you want to, but again, every now and then people see him falling apart. So there's a downside to that. Then you get a hysterical drunk woman like Kamala Harris, allegedly hysterical and drunk before we get sued, who as well has so many gaffes and says stupid things that easily mobilize the others. And I think this is where Keir Starmer has been put there, because he's a weak candidate. He's a weak leader. He does zigzag. He pivots and pivots again, and says very right-wing things, says the age of open borders is open, and then at the same time then says something entirely different the next week. And I think Tony Blair, as the puppet master in the back, is despairing that, again, his little incompetent drone, kind of like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, is not quite doing what he's meant to do. He's still meant to be competent, but he isn't, fortunately, for our side. But how that's going to end is anyone's guess. And I'm sorry, I've taken up so much time about Europe. Todd, before we break, I mean, the St. George's Cross is obviously a good segue, in an old Christian symbol that's under assault but being dug up again. Talk us through, what have you been seeing in Armenia and Beirut and the fate of Christians there?
Well, thank you. I'm at the Lady of Our Well convent in Beirut, actually, and I was put here because there was an American kidnapped, a journalist, about a week ago. He was returned, but so they drove me up here for security reasons, and it's been wonderful, very nice. But the situation, I was in Ukraine. We looked at all the attacks on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. We've detailed that. We've had, many people on. We've played videos on all our shows to describe that. So that's the thing. It's hanging in Romania as well, and we were in Armenia to investigate it, and it's happening there too. The globalist leader Pashinyan is going to arrest, last we heard, the leader of the Armenian Apostolic Church, and so you have Rob Amsterdam go there, who's the attorney for the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They tried to let him, prevent him from coming into the country. It's been an interesting situation, but so there's a big attack on the church in Armenia, very similar, almost exactly the type of Ukraine attack. The church is Russian, the church is this, and so we have to shut down and control the church for the state. So that is what's going on. But while I was there, we looked at the Armenian genocide, and that's really unknown in the West at this point. And one thing I realized, I was doing a lot of research, is that there was a huge pushback, primarily in the U.S., against the Armenian genocide in 100 years ago, at the turn of the 20th century. There was women's groups, there was papers, there was NGOs formed to try to combat this and take care of the orphans that were created. So, but it's been erased from our history books. So we tried to shine some light on that. We went to the not the Holocaust Museum, which was the first Holocaust, actually.
Yes.
Over 2 million Armenians were murdered, and then they were marched down into the Syrian desert on a death march, and whoever survived, I think millions left, but 100 and something thousand made it, and they were left to die in the desert, where there's a lot of Armenians in Syria and in Lebanon because of that. So I was connected to people here, and we have been talking to a lot of the Christian leadership here, and there's a big fear. I mean, this whole country was targeted. You had 500,000 Palestinians dumped, and then you had the Shia come in. Then you had 2 million Syrian refugees who are fleeing the Assad regime. They're Sunni, but they won't go back to Syria now that there's a Sunni regime in Syria. So I spoke with a lot of the political leaders here. It's a tense situation, and we're going to try to highlight what's going on so that people around the world are aware of it. That's essentially it in a nutshell.
Wow. I mean, probably one comment on Lebanon as well. It's a cautionary tale. Obviously, Lebanon was sort of carved out because the French had hoped, well, this is going to be a Christian majority state and probably better conditions for the Christians. But very quickly, a state that prided itself of being very cosmopolitan, and Beirut had the reputation as the Paris of the East. And then they were generous towards all the refugees, Christians and non-Christians alike, from the early days of the founding of Israel, but all the other conflicts as well.
Yes.
And before they knew, they're a minority right now. And I think, and from what I understand, correct me in many parts of Lebanon, pretty much Hezbollah is the de facto government and not the Lebanese government.
Well, there's a big Shia presence. Well, the Christian community used to be 60 to 70% a few decades ago. And then the civil war started, which was, I believe all this was engineered. I think there was a deliberate attempt to destroy. They did not want a strong Christian state here in the Middle East, which is this is the center of Christianity. Yesterday, I went to a convent, and there were relics from the cross of Jesus Christ. I was in Armenia. There's the spear that speared Christ. This all happened right here. So, the church began here, and they don't want a strong Christian presence here. So the country, I believe, was intentionally destroyed by bringing in other ethnic groups, weakening the financial system, fomenting color revolutions, and then blowing up the port in the Christian sector. I think that will come out as a major intentional 9/11 style act that, I'm not going to speculate on the air who did it, but from what I'm talking to, for instance, it was blamed on Hezbollah because they had a ship with weapons, ammonium nitrate that left a lot of fertilizer in the port. Well, I was talking to one gentleman the other day who was there when it happened. He was literally stapling people together in the parking lot with a staple gun he found in a desk that were ripped apart, trying to save lives. And it was right smack in the middle of the Christian sector. And he was in the hospital, and there was a guy who, with no wounds, no blood, and I have the picture, sitting there screaming, "It's Hezbollah, it's Hezbollah, it's Hezbollah," like right immediately. So think about that. That is like narrative control, right? Yeah. When you put somebody in to start spreading this right away, and I'm going to do some more work on that, but it's fascinating. And I do believe this community was targeted, and it can't happen anymore. The Trump administration has to quit taking care of other ethnic groups and deal. And we're a Christian country in America. We're 70% Christian still. So we need to protect our brethren, or at least not ignore them. I mean, we're spending a lot of time and money on the Jewish state. Great. That's a whole nother question. We're spending a lot of time and money on Syria, brought down the Assad regime. But what about those 2 million refugees, Sunni, inside Lebanon? They're scared that, there's terror cells all over the country now. So and they're massing troops on the border. There's mercenaries that were brought in to fight the war that are still there that could attack the Christian community. There's a lot of concern here. So we're gonna stay on this.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, this is kind of what journalism ought to be, shining a light where certain folks don't want any light. And I guess probably to round it up, I mean, the big question, well, I mean, lest we forget, also a Christian church had been hit a couple of weeks ago in Gaza. So make of that what you will.
And in Damascus.
And Damascus. So
yeah,
probably the one overarching question, I mean, in the one uniting theme that we're seeing here is Christians being targeted everywhere, and we haven't even talked about what our African brothers and sisters are.
That's our next stop. We're going to Nigeria next. I don't know when, but we'll be going there.
Very good. We haven't even touched on that, but essentially the question is why? And I mean, if you look at every single totalitarian regime, whether they succeeded or whether they were ultimately thwarted, in Spain, 1939, it's 1936 to 39, they were thwarted. They had horrendous plans for the Christian part of Spain. Spain normally being an all-Christian country, but it wasn't quite so in those days, and they planned to kind of genocide at least a quarter of all Spanish Christians. But the question's why? And I guess Christianity properly interpreted, and especially it's in its Orthodox flavors, not in the term of the sense, say, Greek Orthodoxy or Russian Orthodoxy, but in its core, doesn't accept any earthly masters and accepts your own conscience, and also the crucial God created us in his image. So therefore we believe in the socialist new man. We don't believe in fictitious genders being made up. We don't believe we clamp down more so than the other world religions in their mystic flavors that they have against human sacrifice and all the demonic stuff that goes. I mean, if we don't want to lift the lid today on child abuse and child sacrifice, which is all too prevalent in this world, but it's Christianity that stands between totalitarian control and freedom, and time and again it had been taking out on Christians. And
well, I'll just bring up, I got to go because I have another show to do, but this is an article I wrote after visiting the Armenian Genocide Memorial, a globalist effort to remove followers of Christ from the earth. And there's an article that I wrote on the Lebanese Christians in danger of attack by Syrian jihadi government. So we're going to stay on this, but I completely agree with you. One other point I was thinking, if you wanted to destroy further Christianity and depopulate the population, why don't you do a war between the two biggest countries in Central Asia that are Christian, like Russia and Ukraine, and just keep the war going and kill as many of them as possible. It came out this week that 1.7 million Ukrainians were dead or maimed. So, I mean, that's horrific. I mean, that is, the NATO's been lying. The White House has been lying. Maybe not Trump, but as Trump gets a hold of it, a lot of bad information is coming out. The media has been lying. So anyway, with that, I've got to go, Christian. Is there anything else you want to put out?
No, I think we're definitely a topic we are going to follow. We're going to follow the topic of re-Christianizations of part of Europe, be that in the UK, be that in Albania, where apparently the Christians are now the majority. Amazing story. We need to get Kurt on that particular one. So there's also light amongst the darkness, and we'll shine a light on the good parts. So well, very much looking forward, and stay safe.
Yes, and I enjoyed the show. That was a good one. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
I know it's always not easy to pull away for an hour, so thank you very much.
Not to worry. Thank you. Take care.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Hope you enjoyed the show today. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got a lot going on. We'll be putting together a great list of guests. I was working on that just now. So Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye.